Hey, what's happening, everybody? Earl Campbell here from Eastern Shore Undercover. And today we have a very special guest on the show. We have the president of the IAFF Local 4246 with the Salisbury Fire Department, Sergeant Brandon Records. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome. Thank you for having me. It's the first time doing this, so ready to get my feet wet.
Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time out. Brandon, before we get started, just wanted to go over a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little about your career with the fire department, how long you've been a firefighter. Did you start with Salisbury, and how long you been with the IAFF 4246?
Yeah, so born and raised Salisbury, Maryland. Graduated good old James M. Bennett High School, proud Clipper, and yeah, I joined. I've been with the Salisbury Fire Department now for just hit 18 years. Been promoted to sergeant for roughly, I believe it's been about 4 years now. And started off as several of our members have started off as a volunteer cadet, I believe when I was 16. 16 I think was the age. And I was lucky enough, I got into I think it was the first year it was even offered, was the VOTEC program at Parkside High School, where they offered the fire and EMS program. So I was able to luckily get everything, all my classes and certs that I needed to be a career fireman with Salisbury while I was in attending school. So very, very
Oh,
awesome, lucky program. And then turn 18, you're able to join as a full kind of adult member at that point. And fast forward, I was hired in to be exact, January 14th of 2008, I believe it was. So yeah, it's been a long time as far as calendar goes, but man, I tell you,
yeah,
it life is no joke. Just like everybody says, it'll fly by. Definitely.
yeah. So over the last couple weeks, there's been a lot of talk going on about the collective bargaining and the binding arbitration, and that's part of the reason that I want you, to come on the show and to sit down and dispel some of the rumors and go over some of the issues. So can you tell us in your own words when this all started with the collective bargaining issues and when you knew it was going south with the mayor and what he was going to present to the city council?
Sure. So this all started, the full backstory. So Local 4246, we have been a recognized entity or unit or local as far as the IAFF or the International Association of Firefighters is concerned since 2003. So we've had due paying members since then. But in um, 2022, I believe it was, if my dates are correct, we started the process of actually trying to obtain bargaining rights. We sat down with then Mayor Jake Day in his office. I still remember sitting in his office having the conversations with him. Um,
Mhm.
and frankly, we were lobbying on our own behalf. If you can imagine, after at that point, what's that, almost 20 years at that time of being a local with the IAFF, and
Right.
never having bargaining rights, there comes a time where, you have to be recognized and, it kind of gets
Mhm.
old. So the talks went on, talks were good. And bluntly, uh, Mayor Day said, hey, I'm on board with this. We're going to make this happen. Um, and at the time, he said, you have to help me explain this to the other units. Well, come to find out, long story short, his explanation of it was, he ended up offering it to all the units. So
Yeah.
probably less of a headache, less of a struggle to explain, giving to one unit and not others.
Mhm.
Um, and so fast forward, we signed our first collective bargaining agreement with the city finally in 2024. So we are just coming up on the end of our first ever collective bargaining contract.
Okay.
And I think it was about 6 months ago. I had to once again go to council chambers because we heard whispers of the mayor possibly trying to dismantle the CBAs and the unions.
Mhm.
It was met with no reception by the council members who actually spoke up. I believe there was one or two who kind of declined or didn't really, they reserved themselves. But
Right.
the only talks at that time were to effectively alter the dates of bargaining, which we had no objection to. We've said, or our representation has said all along that it makes more sense to have these newer dates. So we were fine with that, and we thought it was going to be, that was the end of it. It was squashed. There was no reception to it. And then, come to present day, like I said, about 2 weeks ago, probably, we started hearing the probably more than whispers at this point that the mayor was yet
Right.
again trying to dismantle the labor unions and the collective bargaining agreements and do away with them altogether. And frankly, he was touting that he had the votes this time. You know, uh, like you said, you've seen the video as well. We were there in the council chambers um, this past Monday, and frankly, it doesn't look promising.
Mhm.
And it's kind of we're a little taken back and a little disheartened to wonder what has changed over the
Right.
last 6 months. So we'll see where it goes,
Mhm.
but I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there. So we're just trying to
Brandon, if we
whatever we
could,
can.
for the person that doesn't understand what collective bargaining is, can we go back and, in your words, explain exactly what it is, how it gives you guys a voice, and
Yeah,
what collective bargaining and binding arbitration actually is?
yeah. So of course, everybody, and unions and collective bargaining, I think it's a bad rap because of what you see online from, the private sector unions, the Starbucks, the people who are going on strike. And to be clear, the IAFF has a clear stance on strike. There is a no strike policy. It is not in our agenda to ever be able to even to do a strike. We're here
Right.
to serve citizens, and that's what we chose to do. It's what we love to do. Otherwise, we
Mhm.
wouldn't be here. But so unions and collective bargaining it's not a money grab by any means. Wages are by all means a part of it, so that we can keep up with current times and the market. But
Mhm.
it encompasses things like health and safety, so that we have real input on access to better and safer gear. There's a huge push right now from the IAFF on PFAS free gear.
Right.
Um, so quite frankly, like we're exposed to, you know, possible cancer causing agents every time we put our gear on now and for the last,
Mhm.
decades. Um, Career advancement, it's written in now to our agreement that they have to actually post test scores of how you do on promotional tests, which before that wasn't even a thing. It was, no one ever knew how you did. It was always you felt like administration just kind of cherry picked or picked whoever was their
Right.
favorite. So now you actually know by number like where you fall on the list. So there's no misconstruing.
Mhm.
Access to further education. We have people that choose to go on to go from a firefighter EMT to a firefighter paramedic. It's written in there now that they are to have access to that. And, like they can't be necessarily denied without reasonable, given any kind of good excuse, we'll say.
Right. Okay.
Um, Real input and dialogue with admin. So we have what's called a labor management committee now. We meet quarterly with our chiefs of the department, and it's real dialogue. We get to sit across the table from them, and it's essentially it's more of we'll take the badge and the uniform off, and we're talking person to person about real things that affect us on a daily basis and things that could be changed, should be changed, things that we see on the street that work better, and we're able to have that actual conversation with them now and being able to be representative if there's a grievance or a complaint filed against you, we get everything the same as PD. It can be the most um you know false, just out of nowhere, just somebody making up something, or it could be legit, but we're
Yeah.
able to have a union representative in the room with us at that time to be some people get nervous, some people are the best question
Mhm.
answers, you forget things. We're able to reference policies or, different aspects of the job that, you may forget while you're sitting there being grilled, quite frankly. So that's just a couple things, but a
Sure.
CBA actually secures those things. It's written in black and white. It's not just some vague policy or
Yeah.
promise.
Right. So basically, it's an outline of what you guys get offered from the city, more of protections and of what they're going to pay, required to provide you guys throughout your
Correct.
contract.
Yeah,
Yeah. So now, were you there when the first contract was started, and were
I
you
was.
part of that?
I Yeah. So I have been president now for, oh Lord. I want to say it was probably between 2022 and 2023, I believe. So
Okay.
yeah, I was there from the initial talks with Jake. I was VP at the
Mhm.
time, and then shortly thereafter, took over as president. So yeah, from literally lobbying start to finish to current day.
So, knowing how long you've been there, you've been through several mayors, what, at least 3, I believe? Several city council members, and through the entire collective bargaining agreement. Seeing this all play out from the start to the finish, you know, what are your thoughts on the whole process? Is it beneficial to the not only the fire department, but also to the city and to the citizens?
Yeah, 1,000%, honestly. You know, uh, like I said, a CBA is instead of having a potential empty promise from your city or your admin or your government,
Mhm.
it's a legal document, signed. Y- those are your protections in black and white.
Mhm.
Um, I wish I could have, hard facts to prove that, it was a direct correlation of it. But I would like to say that since we have obtained collective bargaining, that we've seen like a slight uptick in potential candidates coming to Salisbury, but we're still down. We're still, when I
Right.
tested, it was 60 to 100 people, and we're lucky to get 6 to 12 now, and out of
Mhm.
that there might be 2 to 4 that pass everything and have all the credentials.
Mhm.
But yeah, as far as the city, like I said from the get go, we are not of the mindset and opinion to bankrupt the city by asking these ungodly numbers or whatnot. We're realists. I'm a realist.
Mhm.
It does us no good to do that because then
Right.
no one can be paid. And then so what your staffing falls, which affects your responses. People go elsewhere, and then it ultimately falls on the citizens, which are the consumers. Their tax dollars help fund this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. It's quite frankly, I am like the anomaly, one of few. So I am an employee, a president, and a city taxpayer. So
Yeah.
it affects me just as much as it does, anyone else. And I know I'm a little different because I can see from the inside looking out, like I see the benefit of it. Like, uh,
Mhm.
you know, we we staff 3 capital pieces, 2 engines, and a ladder truck on a daily basis, and now 4 ambulances, 3 paramedic units, and a BLS unit.
Mhm.
The what we're able to do with those numbers to a city of now, I believe, the last census was like 35,000, which can, Monday through Friday flexes to about anywhere right around 100,000 with workers,
Mhm.
everyone commuting in and out. What we're able to do is sometimes it seems like a miracle. We still on a daily basis, it seems like we run out of ambulances and quite frankly, fire units sometimes just trying to keep up with the increased calls of service over the years.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to have a collective bargaining agreement and have the employees feel that trust, like they're going to be taken care of from their government, from their employer.
Mhm.
We retain those people so that we're able to keep a cohesive, functioning fire department to provide for the citizens, which I think
Yeah.
I would like to hope and think that they appreciate and trust at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you this, just to chime in, we listen to 10 different counties of fire departments and police departments. And just from a fire department standpoint, at this time of year, there's no other department that I hear that's busier than the Salisbury Fire Department. In the summer, Ocean City gets a little crazy, but that's just a short window. Um, from my standpoint, from hearing the radios and everything going off from, like I said, 10 different counties, Salisbury Fire Department is definitely one of the busiest.
Yeah,
So,
I think the last stat that I recall, it's been a while since I've had to reference it, but I believe Salisbury runs over 60% of the total calls for Wicomico County, and I'll just reference. I got the latest up to date stats. So as of last year, 2025 was just over about 17,500. So we run, if you took all the departments in Wicomico County and combine them, we run more than all combined.
mm.
Like, it's
And
just
for
re
those of you that don't know, Salisbury Police or Salisbury Fire Department, I don't know why I keep police department. Salisbury Fire Department goes all over. So last weekend, or I think it was believe on Friday a week ago, they had a grain incident up in Delaware, and you guys went to Delaware to help them guys out.
yeah, yeah,
It's not
correct.
just around here.
Luckily, I knock on wood, it's not my cup of tea. I've been lucky to not have to be involved in one of those yet. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's a wild scenario, and that's I know not everywhere in the country has to deal with that.
right.
But it's something I would say I could probably think of 3 or 4 instances in the last several years that like we've had to participate in those.
Yeah, crazy. Brandon, let's take the hat off for the IAFF local president. Let's put it on the firefighter. You're
Yep.
around the guys and the girls all the time. What's the morale like since this happened and since the talk of the collective bargaining going away? How are they handling it?
Oh man. Um, just like anyone would expect, it's a punch to the gut. Like I said, we can't even we're not even making it to the end of our first contract yet. It's not even over. And,
Mhm.
there the talks of dismantling the union. So it's definitely I would be lying if I said it anything other than lower currently. We still show up. Salisbury has notoriously always been for as long as I can remember, even when I was, a child being brought up around the fire department, Salisbury has always been a tighter knit group. People come here to work, and obviously it's not it's not for the pay. That's for sure. But
Yeah.
people come here, Salisbury, to for the action, just like you referenced. You listen to 10 other counties, and people come to Salisbury for the action. We go to roughly between, I think it's 70 to 85 house fires or building fires, apartment fires a year. So we are, that's higher than a lot of places. And just the multitude of calls, the traumas, the accidents, the grain bin rescues, all
Mhm.
the multitudes of things that we see and are privy to that a lot of other places aren't. That's why a lot of people choose Salisbury because they want to be in the action. It's
Right.
not for the dollar. It's because we love doing what we do. I'm
Mhm.
sure there's a fighter jet pilot would probably tell you that it's the biggest adrenaline rush anybody's career you could probably reference, but I'm telling you, there's nothing like the adrenaline rush of a house fire. Like
Yeah.
there's probably few things like it, being inside that environment or, getting to cut, if somebody's trapped in a car, being able to use the jaws of life to,
Right.
hit somebody from that, you name it. And, we're just a bunch of adrenaline junkies at the end of the day that enjoy doing what we do. And we try to be really good at it.
Right. Yep. Yep. So at the most recent city council meeting, that where they talked about the collective bargaining and binding arbitration, we saw about 30 people get up and speak during public comment. And there was one in particular that really caught my attention, and I wanted to focus on his comments if we can.
Yep.
I'm not going to put his name out there and expose who he was or anything like that. But he explained how he kept falling behind in rank and in pay, and how he was so far behind what he should be. My wife and I, we were talking about it after we got done, and we're like, man, that guy's really, he's so far behind. It's kind of impossible for him to ever catch up to where he really should be. Can you explain to the community how that happened and what was done to even try to catch him up? And is there other people like him, or was he just a unique situation?
No, that was, that at the beginning before bargaining, that was probably well over half our department was, I mean, multiple steps behind. I'm talking anywhere from 5 to 15 or more steps behind as far as the current pay scale that the city advertised based on what we go on.
Mhm.
Um, and to my best knowledge, because I was younger at the time in the old, I call it the old system. Um, the way the old system worked was there was still a pay scale, it was still written out. But if you were to promote or better yourself or take on more responsibility, the way it was worded is you would get an 8% increase in pay. Now, the problem with that is say you would go up a grade, so more a higher position, you would go up a grade, but you
Mhm.
would literally in almost I think all cases, you would go back career steps or years of service to whatever that number, whatever equaled 8%, that was the step that they would put you to. So in the gentleman's case that you were referencing, I think it happened to him a couple times, but the one time he was 12 years in and he went back to a step one at the time, he had to grieve it because it still wasn't the right number. And they did
Right.
nothing more than put him at a step two. So he went from 12 years of service all the way back to 2. And that happened to, like I said, numerous people that are just losing years of service. And so now they will never, unless we were to be able to miraculously help it with, bargaining, collective bargaining is the only thing that has helped us uh, fix that problem or right that wrong. That is the
Mm.
only thing because the city, when they switched to the new pay scale, they did not do anything to put you in the correct year of service step. The people they
Wow.
were just stuck where they are. And then, every year now we have the merit raises and they would go a step, but they are still so far behind that they will never retire at their full potential.
Wow. So it's probably, the collective bargaining kind of works as an insurance policy for you guys to kind of prevent that from happening. At least gives you a voice to prevent it from happening.
Yeah, it does. And that same gentleman, I was just speaking with him earlier. He is still like he is behind. And
Mm.
we still, um, gosh, I'd have to, if you don't mind, I will reference. Uh, I believe we have, looking at a chart, I would say over 20 people still, without counting them individually, are still between anywhere from 1 year, one step of service to 5 is
Wow.
the most.
Wow.
And so, like I said, we've been able to make real impact and real because even that 5 year behind used to be probably more like 15 to 20. So we've been able to make real progress and get people to their correct step. But if that goes away, their folks, they're just stuck. They'll never
Yeah.
reach their full potential to retire.
Yeah. Now, Brandon, I don't know if you know this or not, but like in the police departments, if you have somebody that has, 10, 15 years, 18 years like yourself, however much time you have, you can lateral to a different department. In the fire department, is it like that? Or is that something different? It's not really like that in the fire department.
It's yes and no. We're a little different because we are under the LEOPS retirement, same as City
Okay.
PD. So in order to be able to transfer directly, you would have to find another, Maryland Fire Department that is operating under LEOPS, which I'm not even sure off the top of my head who has it. So I
Right.
know people who a lot of people who have left over the years. I know some close friends, they've actually had to, for lack of better terms, buy their time from the state
Mhm.
at some, astronomical rate, I think it is. So
Yeah.
you can buy years of service, I believe, and as far as your retirement, but to be able to transfer, it's hard. And, like we've talked before, we're kind of an anomaly because other than, Ocean City, being 30 minutes down the road from us, everyone, all the other, truly career departments are across the bridge.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing that I've learned is that, guys aren't afraid to drive across the bridge, for a good job. And there's 2 people that I know of that actually drive across. They live here in Wycomico County and drive to Anne Arundel County daily to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
So if you take away that collective bargaining, it's even gonna make that worse, and you're gonna have a harder time getting people to even apply.
Yeah. I have numerous friends that do the same thing. And just for reference, I was jotting down before we started. So the the career departments who do have bargaining in the state, which is essentially us now included, but if this keeps going the way it is and you subtract us, it'll be everybody
Mhm.
but us essentially. So it's Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Washington D.C., Anne Arundel, Howard County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Hagerstown, Frederick City and Frederick County, Cumberland, and a couple like outliers. Even Sussex EMS is unionized, and I believe Hartford EMS, Hartford County EMS. So these
Mhm.
small entities are even under collective bargaining agreements. So we were kind of before all this, we were the anomaly. Like we were like kind of like the last holdout, if you will.
Right.
So really, like we've kind of caught up with times essentially with having a collective bargaining agreement for a career fire department.
Mhm. Crazy.
But yeah,
So when
those guys, they will definitely drive. I
Yeah.
could probably, if I sat down real quick, and I could probably think of 20 to 30 names easy to that make that drive, every couple
Mhm.
days to work.
Crazy. So when all this first started, when all this came out, I sent a message to the mayor, and I didn't know whether it was true or not because it was the first I'd heard about it. And he, basically came forward and said, "Yes, it's on the agenda for Monday." And I keep hearing that it's not in the math, and it's not financially feasible for the city to do that. You know, meaning pay our first responders, our people that work in the city. I'm not sure if you could talk about this, and if you can't, by all means, just say you can't. But was there ever a number that was talked about that the mayor is referring to for for any of this that shows that the city can't afford it?
No, frankly, there, we have been at the table. We've sat there, we presented, we've spent thousands of our own dollars to have a third party financial analyst take our numbers dollar for dollar and that includes retirement, pay per hour, benefits, all that. And she compares it to all the other financial info that she has from our six, she calls it the big six, our competitors in the state, including Ocean City. And then we have a report from her that we present to show just how far behind we are compared to our competitors and why we're not recruiting and retaining people. And we
Right.
present that, and then as in bargaining, we present an initial number, and in theory they should come back and present one too. Well, as far as we're concerned, that's never happened. They've walked away from the table, and like you said, you referenced in the meeting that it's financially unsustainable.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how you can present that info to both council and the citizens if there is not an agreed upon number.
Right.
How do you run a report and say something is unsustainable if there's not a number that's been agreed upon to run that info on? It just seems irresponsible.
I agree. I agree. When the collective bargaining talks and agreement took place initially back in 2022, I think you said. There were several different members of the city council, there was a different mayor. In your opinion, and from the opinions of those that you have spoken to that work in the city, do you think that this council and the mayor are anti-labor code, or I guess you'd say anti-collective bargaining? Meaning, do you think they don't care about, you know, maintaining, good employees or good first responders here in the city, or what caused this?
Um, two part. So we have heard from before he took office that the mayor is was about getting rid of the unions. We've heard that from numerous sources, numerous times. He's denied it on several occasions and told us quite frankly, your unions are safe. I'm not going to mess with them. Well, here we sit current day. As far as the council, like you said, there's been, we've had changes over the last like year or two. People have left, new people have come. What I can say is, the three women who have been there through this whole process, they had always had our back. They had always been, pro civil service. We're out there day in day out, keeping the city running, answering 911 calls. Whatever the case, but whatever the emergency is, the fire department has been the fallback. It seems like, and but it goes for all like police and general. They've always seemed to want what's best for the employees.
Mhm,
And now it just makes you scratch your head and think what has changed over the last, even 6 months. Because the three that have been there from the get go, just 6 months ago when this was brought up, you know, unanimously rejected it, wouldn't even discuss it. And now here we are, and apparently there's one that is flipped and is for the mayor's idea. Now what's changed? Everyone can speculate whether it's a community center that's been after for 10 plus years. I don't know, but um, I just think there are so many other avenues that we could go down that don't involve affecting, over I don't even know the total count of employees in the city, but
mm,
hundreds of people's lives and safety.
yeah. Let's flip the cards a little bit, and let's talk about what happens if this does take place and they get rid of collective bargaining. If they get rid of this, what's going to happen, and what are the effects, not only for the firefighters, but for the citizens of Salisbury who live and work and play here in Salisbury every day? What are the consequences of what will happen?
Like I've said before, mass exodus. I don't know. I mean, that's jumping to the extreme, but I don't ultimately I don't think it's that extreme. Will we as the fire department lose as many as police or general? Um, I don't know. Probably not, but I really don't know. We are a very, very young department. So we don't have people that have they don't have a lot of the roots or the ties. Some of these younger folks, they could very easily uproot and find a greener pasture and go on.
Yeah,
And the difference between us and police is that not every town or community has a career fire department. So there are a lot more outs, we'll call it, for police or options. And same thing with general employees. Every town has general employees and laborers that they need spots filled.
right.
Um, so yeah, will we lose people? I would say almost definitely. How many? I don't know. That's a $1 million question.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's not good. So if we lose employees, and then what happens? They start shutting firehouses down, start shutting fire engines down. We can't keep up with what we have now, and you're going to ask us to do more with even less to a city that won't stop growing.
Yeah.
Everywhere we drive, the citizens are no good. They see it too. There's an apartment building or a housing development popping up everywhere. There's free
Yeah.
land, but it seems like, from my perspective, like, we're not keeping up. If you're going to grow a city, I'm all about you growing the city and the tax base, but you have to have the civil services or services in general to be able to provide for more citizens. And it just
Right.
seems like, we haven't kept up. We're not keeping up with that demand over the years.
Yeah. And we're not doing anything to keep the guys here, especially if you take away the collective bargaining.
No,
So,
based on our pay analysis, we're anywhere from 20 to, I believe it's 35% behind on average, depending on
r-
seniority and rank. Our
r-
competitors, like, those are real numbers. So
yeah.
people already see that, and you take this away, and the possibility for any more safety and advancement. I mean, people are going to see greener pastures, and those younger ones, I think we're at real risk of losing.
Hmm. Yeah. Brandon, in a perfect world, the mayor sitting across the table from you, the city council sitting across the table from you, what would you say to them to get them to change their mind and say, look, this can't happen. This is all we're asking for. What would you say?
Um, just the fact that there are other avenues, just the fact that we are realists. I fully, like I said, I'm a city taxpayer as well. I know that there can be financial hard times. I've worked through myself and some others worked through the debacle that was the 09 whatever. We had furloughs. We got sent home without pay. Like, that was a real thing. So we understand that there can be hard financial times, and like I said, it does us no good to bankrupt the city, and so no one can get paid. So we are all about, like, coming to a real agreement that works for both sides, but it has to be both sides. You can't just walk away from the table, you know?
Right.
I mean, bargaining is truly a seat at the table. This idea that he referenced about, possibly we can come up with a solution to get people good raises over the years, and we can go back to this. I think they call it like the employee club or employee, where we would essentially, before the unions, they would give us 15-20 minutes to go sit in front of council during budget time, and it's basically like we got entertained, and then it's like, all right, cool. See you guys next year.
Okay, right.
Um, but bargaining is a real seat at the table for things that affect us and our jobs and our lives. And, they
Mhm,
really truly have to listen now. Um,
mhm,
so so just come to like, don't we don't have to dissolve the unions to come to a realistic solution. He referenced, I believe it was he made the reference of, well, these are the cards we've been dealt, and we just have to play them. And I would like to say that it's more like he's just playing like a bad game of go fish until he gets
right,
the hand that he wants for his agenda and what works for him, and then he'll play those.
right.
um so just, we're realistic. Just don't walk away, and just come sit at the table with us and come to a reasonable agreement that works for everybody.
Well, hopefully cooler heads will prevail, and that's what will happen. I'm not sure whether it will or
Yeah.
not. It doesn't really appear that way after the last council meeting, but hopefully that'll change. Brandon, before we wrap this up, anything I forgot that you think is important for the citizens to know? Anything you want to say? Anything at all?
Um, Honestly, just that, no, we've already started. We're trying to get out in the community and hand out flyers, spread info, and we would urge you to, if this affects you, and which it does every city citizen, and quite frankly, every, because you're well aware as I am, Salisbury's about, I call it a block of Swiss cheese,
Mhm.
affectionately. And so, city or county, Salisbury, fire and EMS district, this is going to affect you. We urge you to reach out, contact your council representative, and tell them that you adamantly oppose this, because it will have real lasting effects, that will eventually trickle down and affect everyone, in some way, shape, or form. It's not what we want. Like I said, this is the job that we all chose to do, not for the money, but because we love doing what we do.
Right.
Um, and we just, sorry, not sorry that we want to make a reasonable living doing something that most people wouldn't even consider. Quite frankly, you always get the people that say, I don't know how you do it. Well, we do. And, we risk our lives and we have a dramatically increased rate, risk of, developing, certain cancers over our lifetime. And it's like, we just, we want to feel appreciated. And
Yeah.
though it's not all about money, some of it is, making a decent living and a job that can kill you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, look, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking the time. We've been around, what, 40, 45 minutes now. I do appreciate it. I want to make sure the citizens knew what was really happening and not just, from people getting up there for 3 minutes and being able to talk in a council meeting. So I thank you. I appreciate you coming on. And maybe we'll have you back on after we have the next council meeting and see where we're at with everything.
No, yeah, absolutely, man. The dialogue is awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed being able to kind of give our side and a little bit of what's going on as far as we're concerned.
Cool. Well, that's all we got for you here today, folks. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. Myself and Brandon Records from the Salisbury Fire Department. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and we'll make sure we get them answered for you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.